This is Dan, and this is the Napkin Academy. This will be our last lesson on the imagining process, and what we're going to do is we're going to take one more good look at our friend the squid, because there is one more way that we can use this powerful tool to help us clarify ideas for business. Here's what I mean. The next time we have an idea and we need to pitch it to someone, or we need to make a sale, or we need to convince someone, or we need to try to raise money, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to start with our idea, as we always do, and then we've got to figure out a way to be able to share our idea in a way that our audience is going to find really compelling. So we're going to need to, of course, communicate our idea. Now, there are two ways that we normally start doing this in business, and I'll tell you what, using the squid, we are not going to do either one of them. The first way that we typically try to prepare our pitch is we start writing, and we start up here, and we write, 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 until we get all the way to the end, and it's very linear, and guess what? In the end of the day, she is not going to read it because she doesn't have the time. She wants to know, what is your big idea? Give it to me faster. So what many of us then do is the second approach to business communication these days is we fire up our laptop and we fire up PowerPoint, and here we go. Let's start populating those slides with every single thing we can think of. And guess what? We're still going to end up with something that's not very good, because when we show it to this person, she's going to freak out for all the reasons that we've been talking about before. No, that is not what we're going to do. The next time we need to imagine how to put our idea together into something that someone else is willing to look at and makes sense. We're going to use the 5 letters of the squid as the ultimate business story outline. And let me show you what I mean. We're going to start with our idea, and then we're going to make right up front a very simple statement about it. And that's how we're going to begin. And then we're going to elaborate on that statement. And then we're going to say something about how does it feel. And then we're going to talk about how would we measure it. And then we're going to talk about what do we think we need to do to achieve a different vision. And then we're going to say what steps do we need to take to make that vision happen. And then we're going to say, well, what would that look like by itself? And then we're going to say, well, how would that compare to other ideas? And then we're going to say, so here's where we began, and we're going to end with here's how it's going to be different. We are literally going to use the squid as an outline. Let me just take you through an example and show you what I mean. So let's identify a simple statement about a big problem. And the problem that I want to share with you as my thesis problem is that over the last couple of years, in particular beginning in the year 2008, Detroit, the Motor City that used to be sort of the heart and soul of American manufacturing, has really started to die. Might as well go ahead and, that's my simple statement, draw a tombstone. You want me to elaborate a little bit more? Over the last few years, General Motors has gone through so many levels of restructuring. Ford has come near to bankruptcy. Chrysler has come very near to bankruptcy. The industries that have made up the heart of Detroit have started to die. Well, what does that feel like? Well, to tell you the truth, it feels like the whole bunch of us are just sort of hanging off a cliff, ready to take a tumble. Well, let's talk about quantitatively, what does that mean? Well, if we were to measure it out, it looks sort of like this. Well, I can get a little bit more specific for you. Here are light vehicle sales from 1997 up to the year 2009. And look at this. Sales were going up, sales were holding. And what's happened since the recession came in? 2008, 2009. Look at what sales are going to do. That's when we start talking about Detroit is dying, and I can measure it for you. Well, listen, we need to do something about it. What might be a possible solution? Well, what would happen if we started to build cars that people were more interested in buying? One possible solution might be to start building hybrid cars, cars that have a little plug coming out the back that allows to charge them up. Goodness knows the sales of those kind of cars have been going up around the world. Maybe that's something that Detroit should start to do. Well, if we were going to realize that vision, how would we need to do it? Well, the first step is we need to react. We need to see what's going on in the automotive industry worldwide and make changes. Then we need to think about retooling so that we could build a different type of car on the assembly lines that we have. And then we need to do a fair amount of reinvestment to make sure that we could go ahead and begin to build those cars. And what would that mean all by itself? Well, if we had hybrid cars and hybrid cars remain popular, what would that mean is that we would have people who are happy to come in and start buying American cars again. The types of cars that over the years they've been buying that have been coming from other places because hybrids haven't been made in the United States. So that's by itself what it might mean. And how would that compare to other things that we might do? Well, what would happen if we continued to make enormous gas guzzler cars that nobody wants to buy? Nobody is buying. Well, that's not going to work. And what would happen if we made really high-end, very expensive cars that nobody was able to buy? Well, the same thing would happen. People wouldn't be buying them. So that's how it might compare. If we do nothing and we continue to let our automotive industry languish because we keep building cars that nobody wants to buy, what's going to happen? Well, workers, our labor force, and therefore a vast part of our population is going to continue to be unhappy because there won't be work, and the entire nation is going to economically underperform. But if we're able to make some of these changes, what might happen? Well, we would have a workforce that could be employed again, and when our workforce is employed, the entire nation might be able to be more effective in terms of generating income again, and the economy could start to turn. So there we have a very simple story using the squid. And once I've got this story outline complete, my visual outline composed of my 5 questions written in order, now I can do a couple of things. One thing is I can rehearse, and I can go and deliver this story to someone on a whiteboard exactly as I've just delivered it to you. Or number 2, I can simply use it as my outline for beginning to think about how would I create a more detailed presentation that might be more formal and more final in its polish. And now we're at the end of our lessons on imagining, and we're at the end of our lessons on the squid, a very useful tool that has many, many applications when we're trying to become better at visually clarifying our idea. Let's quickly wrap up the 3 ways that we can use the squid. The first way is when we have an idea in mind and we want to think about ways that we could expand that idea to come up with multiple options. We run it through the 5 questions of the squid. The second way we might want to use this idea is once we've got our idea and we want to think about what might be interesting about it, what might be the best picture to show somebody else, what is it that our audience might be most interested in. Again, we take our idea and we run it through the squid, and it will help us understand what are the various types of pictures that might appeal to these various audiences. And the third way, the one we just summarized here, is how to take the squid and use it as a way to create a straightforward outline for how to convincingly tell any business story so that it includes just about every aspect of that story that we can think of in a smooth, linear, easy to remember way. So here's what I'd like you to do now as our final exercise on the squid. I'd like you to take any idea that you might have in your mind. Let's start with something fairly simple. Some idea that you'd like to share with someone else. What I'd like you to do is go ahead, run it through the squid, using the squid as an outline. Tell your story by starting out with a simple statement, simple thesis, running all the way through to the end, saying, how would this make the world different? Test out the squid. Let's do it.